G'day folks, Pop Papaya here, filling in while young Papaya Koala learns the ancient Australian art of catching sneaky snakes. Apparently, it's an essential Aussie life skill these days. Welcome to Silverstone, the home of British motorsport, where, coincidentally, the FIA, Liberarity, FOM, and possibly even the laws of aerodynamics all seem to be cheering for the arrows. And would you look at that? It's actually sunny in England. That's suspicious enough to warrant its own investigation. Seeing as we're at Silverstone for a sprint, I've come dressed for the occasion. Today I'm channeling a little Sherlock Holmes, because somebody needs to investigate the growing pile of mysteries Formula One would rather we all politely ignore. Today's cases include the curious case of McLando's disappearing pace, the mystery of the missing confidence, the case of Kimi's perpetually charged battery, the steward's inexplicable inability to see Kimi's track limits infringements, and whether the FIA have accidentally confused independent regulator with Arrow customer service. Righto, grab your magnifying glass. The game's afoot. Everything in this episode is based on publicly available timing data, team radios, interviews, FIA documents, television broadcasts, and Papaya Koala's growing collection of suspicious spreadsheets. Any opinions expressed are exactly that, opinions, even when they happen to line up remarkably well with the stopwatch. Welcome back to Formula Britain. This week, the travelling circus arrives at Silverstone, the spiritual home of Formula One. British fans, British media, British teams, British drivers, British commentators, British narratives, so same as every other race, but just actually in Britain this time. Qualifying begins and something deeply inconvenient happens. Oscar is quicker than Lando. Now this obviously cannot continue. Lando wriggles off the circuit and damages the car. Fat Rat immediately appears to explain that both McLandos are struggling with downforce. Apparently both cars have less grip than they'd like. Interesting, because one of them seems to be coping rather well. Oscar. Again. Rather awkward for the long-running Oscar can't drive low-grip cars storyline. Apparently he forgot to read the script. Fat Rat then gives Oscar what may genuinely be the greatest compliment he's ever managed. Oscar's performance is decent. You could actually hear him wrestling with the word. It wasn't a compliment. It was a hostage negotiation. Decent. Through gritted teeth, like he'd accidentally swallowed a cactus. Meanwhile, the mechanics repair Lando's car just in time. Lando improves. P6 for Lando, P7 for Oscar. The McLando drama continues. At this point, you'd almost think the customer Arrow engine isn't quite as magical as the one Toto keeps for himself, for his drivers. Because there is absolutely no universe where the bulls are faster than Kimi's Arrow, no matter how many times Lewis, yes Lewis, tries to convince everyone. Unless the customer engine and works engine are about as similar as instant coffee and rocket fuel. Honestly, I believe when the FIA tested for the ADUO, it wasn't the one used in Kimi's car. They actually tested the customer engine. Because if they tested the customer version, that would explain, well, quite a lot. Then came the biggest surprise. Lewis. Pole. Lewis steals it from Kimi. Apparently George's confidence jar has been given to its rightful owner, at least according to the British fans. Kimi looked positively confidence deficient. Don't worry. I'm sure Liberarity have already opened an investigation. Lights out, and immediately both McLandos launch brilliantly. Oscar gets away beautifully, Lando too. Lewis and Kimi also nail the start, which creates a rather amusing situation. Normally Kimi simply drifts everyone else politely towards the nearest postcode. Lewis? Not interested. Because if there's one driver with even more FIA priority credits than Kimi, it's Lewis. Kimi finally discovered what it's like racing someone who knows the stewards probably aren't getting involved. Quite refreshing, really. Lando briefly moves into second. Oscar ends up battling George. Wheel to wheel. Great racing. Oscar even gets ahead for approximately 3 business seconds. Then the Arrow simply drives past. Not because George was clever. Not because Oscar made a mistake. The engine just left. Apparently the works Arrow engine has another setting. See ya! Then the timing screen started doing funny things. By lap 7, Lewis is more than 11 seconds adrift of Oscar in P7. Yes, 11 seconds in just 7 laps. Max was over 5 seconds behind in fourth. And yet somehow we're still expected to believe the Red Bull has the fastest engine. Is Lewis so great that in supposedly lesser machinery, he can beat Max by almost a second a lap? That's hilarious and ignores statistical facts. Lewis is great, a true legend, but let's be real here. Lewis has never once beaten Max in equal machinery, let alone lesser. He has always relied on superior machinery to win. But sure, let's pretend the Bull's engine is superior, yeah? Sure, of course, whatever helps everyone sleep at night. Then lap 8 happened. And honestly, this is where things became rather difficult to explain. Kimi catches Lewis, passes Lewis, then before they've even reached the braking zone, he's 6 car lengths ahead. 6. No recharge hesitation, no harvesting, no waiting, just gone. Again. Which raises the increasingly awkward question, when exactly does this Arrow car recharge? Because every other team appears to spend half the lap recovering energy. The Arrow apparently runs on optimism, or fairy dust. Maybe confidence, or whatever Toto keeps locked inside that suspiciously glowing briefcase. At this point, the Koala crew would like to officially request an actual independent technical investigation. Not because the Arrows are winning. Winning is fine. Dominating is fine. Being clever is fine. Being completely inexplicable while everyone politely pretends nothing unusual is happening is something else entirely. Here's the funny part. I actually think Toto believes everyone is sitting at home admiring him. They're not. Social media has gone from,
"Wow, clever engineering,"
to, "What exactly are we looking at here? Yeah, what's all this then? Something's not right." The conversation isn't admiration anymore. It's suspicion. Lots of it. I've genuinely seen people calling Toto the worst thing that's ever happened to Formula One. Big statement. Very big statement. But here's why people are saying it. When your advantage becomes so ridiculous that fans stop believing what they're watching, they stop applauding. They start asking questions. Christian's dominance made people frustrated. This makes people suspicious. Huge difference. Because nobody believes Kimi is suddenly better than Max. Nobody believes that the Bulls and McLando suddenly forgot how to build cars. People believe that something doesn't add up. And once fans stop believing the racing, you've got a much bigger problem than losing popularity. You've lost credibility. Unfortunately, that's exactly where F1 seems to be heading. And Toto and the Arrows are already there. Sadly for Oscar, Lando finishes ahead. Again. Which means Lando moves back ahead in the championship, giving him priority heading into Sunday's Grand Prix. And once again, that Monaco penalty keeps costing Oscar. Over. And over. And over again. One incorrect stewarding decision still affecting the championship weeks later. Quite impressive, really. Wrong once. Consequences forever. Kimi wins the sprint. Cue immediate celebration from the Sheep commentary team. Youngest sprint winner ever! Of course. There it is. Another History Boy record, another statistic, another manufactured headline, another day where Formula One seems more interested in collecting Guinness World Records than producing memorable racing. Congratulations. You've become the youngest driver ever to win a race that's 1/3 the distance. History. Apparently. As Oscar limps back to the pits after finishing 7th, more than 17 seconds behind Kimi, nearly 10 seconds behind Lando, and over a second a lap slower than the winner, Snake delivers perhaps his finest performance of the weekend. Pace was all good. Sorry. What? Good? Oscar finishes behind Max, 17 seconds behind Kimi, almost 10 behind his own teammate. And that's good pace? By that definition, I'd like to officially announce that I'm 6'4" and Australia's next Olympic gymnast. Perhaps Snake knows something we don't. Perhaps after all those experimental setups, he genuinely expected Oscar to finish somewhere around Birmingham. So compared to that, P7 is absolutely flying. Because that's becoming the recurring theme, isn't it? Whenever Oscar somehow drags a difficult car to a respectable finish, the engineers congratulate themselves. Whenever Oscar points out the strategy isn't going to work, they ignore him. Whenever the setup turns out to be wrong, it somehow becomes evidence that Oscar himself had poor pace. Modern corporate logic at its finest. Oscar, We've made your car slower, therefore it's your own fault that you are slower. And honestly, this seems to be the long-term McLando strategy. They can't restore Lando's reputation by making Lando look faster. So instead they keep trying to make Oscar slower. The only problem? Reality keeps getting in the way. Because dragging someone else down has never been a particularly effective way of lifting yourself up. Are you listening, Fat Rat? So that was the Silverstone sprint. Oscar once again quietly outperforming expectations even with the experimental setups. Fat Rat reluctantly admitting Oscar was decent. Lando inheriting another championship advantage. Lewis briefly reminding everyone he's still Lewis. George borrowing Kimi's confidence, only to immediately give it back. And Arrows continuing to produce performance figures that look less like engineering and more like someone accidentally left the cheat code switched on. Meanwhile, Formula One continues insisting this is the closest racing ever, despite the stopwatch, despite the gaps, despite the fact we're watching one car disappear into the distance without apparently needing to recharge. Sure, closest racing ever. If by closest, they mean the photographers standing next to the podium. So what do you reckon, legends? Are the Arrows simply producing one of the greatest Formula One cars ever built? Or is it finally time for an independent investigation into just how they're finding all this magical electrical performance? Is Fat Rat slowly, begrudgingly, being forced to admit Oscar might actually be, dare I say it, rather good? And has George officially returned Kimi's confidence jar? Let me know below. Until next time, stay safe, stay skeptical, and remember, if your race engineer tells you pace was all good, you might want to check whether he's been watching the same race as everyone else. Sherlock Pop Papaya out. Interesting. Everyone else spends half the race harvesting energy. Kimi just has energy, without recharging. I've checked the wiring. I've checked the regulations. I even measured Kimi's battery, perfectly legal size. Measured it again, still legal. I'm starting to think this thing runs entirely on confidence.